Okay, let's do a critique of the crystal project. We'll start with mine. So the crystal that I wrapped with something I thought was disgusting was supposed to be a snapping turtle crystal. The thing that I love to eat are peach rings, and the thing that I love is my text editor, Sublime, and also Python. So I made like a Python code crystal, peach ring crystal, and a snapping turtle crystal. I feel like the texture on the peach rings is pretty good. The biggest flaw, I think, is in the snapping turtle rubbery foldy neck thing with these like wart things. I think that was largely unsuccessful. I think I approached it with too much of like a drawing style, drawing the shapes. Um, like something like this was what I was trying to get at. Um, this area right here, this disgusting area, I definitely don't think that I captured it properly. Um, Texture's not done very well there. And also the snapping turtle crystal to me is like too cute. I didn't capture the disgustingness of snapping turtles. So in that sense, I think this was a failure. But overall, this piece was okay. I'll try to improve it next year. Okay, this one I love. I love the stained glass Jesus crystal. And then this is the hot dog crystal. And then this is the vanilla ice cream crystal. This is a very nice touch. You see that the vanilla ice cream crystal is melting. So I think the texture was captured very effectively here. I do think all these crystals feel texture-wise how these things would feel in real life. Compositionally, I can't tell which one Jesus Crystal is staring at. If he's staring at hot dog crystal or ice cream crystal, I can't tell which one he wants. But that's just a funny joke. I think the top of the hot dog. What I'll say about this hot dog is I do think the hot dog crystal does feel disgusting. Like it is gross. I get that. I get that feeling from it. It feels disgusting, and I think a part of it is in this top part that makes it feel disgusting. So perhaps, um, what I would want to say is that perhaps some of these lines could be a little bit sharper, these folds, or perhaps the blending of the colors needs to be a little bit more smooth in these regions. But again, I'm not sure if that's a real criticism because this hot dog crystal does feel very disgusting. So I think the spirit of the assignment was completely captured here. Very good work. Another I guess comment that I'm seeing here as I look at it more and more. I do think the shape of this crystal area right here is a little bit awkward. It's a little bit weird, but again, not a real true criticism because crystals can't take on odd shapes. So just a comment. Okay, let's look at this one. I assume this is the crystal they like to eat, which is some kind of mint smoothie or lime smoothie, maybe key lime yogurt smoothie, something like that. Um, I think these are clouds, the thing they love. They love clouds, and I assume this is like an iguana crystal, or something that they don't like. I think the best piece here is the smoothie crystal. This is excellent. Very, very, very good texture. It feels exactly like it would feel texture-wise in real life. This one's excellent. The clouds I think are a little bit too simplistic. Like if you look at clouds, they feel, what's the adjective? There's more folds and more shades of gray. And so I think these crystals are too simplistic as cloud crystals. I think they're too simplistic and they could have been done a little bit better getting texture-wise more of the complexity of the shading of clouds. I think the iguana crystal is a good start, but it feels very cartoony. It does not feel like real texture. So I think texture-wise, the iguana crystal fails in a sense that it doesn't feel real. It doesn't feel realistic. It feels cartoonish. So if the intention was to be a cartoon, then it's not a failure in that sense. But if your intention was, as the assignment suggested, to sort of try to recreate realistic texture around the crystals, I think the iguana one has a lot of work to do. Okay, let's look at this one. This one is, I think this one is perfect. I think this one is essentially precisely what I intend when I assign this challenge, which is effectively trying to capture the texture of three completely different things. So here we have blue cheese, a blue cheese crystal, something that this individual likes to eat. Something that they love, which is, this is origami, so this is paper. You can tell from the texture that it is paper. Like, you can tell just by looking at it how it feels. It's paper. It's blue cheese. And this is soap, okay? And you can tell it feels like soap. Soap is actually, like, it feels thick and kind of like heavy when you pick it up. Like, you can feel that with this object. The shading is perfect, and this is hairy soap. Okay, so this is the thing that they find disgusting, and you can see the hairs, you can see the soap. It feels perfect. This is, I think this is literally a perfect assignment. Here's another really good implementation. Okay, so something they like to eat, an orange. Something they love, I'm assuming these are nits. Something they hate, I think this is mold. I think this is like wall mold. Like, what this looks like to me is, if you get drywall wet, it will look like this. It'll get moldy like this. So I think this is like wall mold, I think. And if that's what it is, extremely effective. The one criticism I have for this piece is I think the mold and the orange crystal are perfect. The one criticism I have is on the knit crystal, there was kind of what I would think, this kind of it could improve it if you would have, as the knits are going over the bends of the crystal, you could have drawn them together. Whereas what's happening here is you can tell that these knits going this way, they don't match up with these knits going this way. So if it would have been a texture sort of wrapped around the crystal, these knits would have sort of perfectly matched up at these points where the polygons meet. So that's my one criticism of the knit crystal, but very effective treatment here of all the textures. Very, very good work. Okay, I love this one. Something they love, R2-D2. The R2-D2 is quite good. The one complaint about the R2-D2 is I think this color's off. I think that color is not the right R2-D2 red. That's the one criticism I have of this. Something they love to consume, beer and cigarettes. I love that. I love that this person enjoys drinking beer and smoking a nice cigarette. I think the bubbles and the carbonation of the beer is really good down here. Really effective treatment of the carbonation, the beverage, the cigarettes, and the head of the beer. Very, very good. And then I presume this is the thing that they don't like, oozing pustules. It is pretty disgusting. Okay, now let's do some comparisons. It's not that I dislike this one. I think this one is an attempt at something different. The issue that I have with this is I don't think the student was quite implementing the purpose of the assignment. In a sense that the purpose of the assignment was to try to capture the texture of a watermelon, the texture of an untied sneaker, the texture of outer space. And so in that sense, I think this assignment is a failure. Now, if the assignment was to do a cartoon, which is an abstraction of the essence of these items, then I think this assignment is a better success in that sense. But in terms of like what the assignment was targeting, I think this is a misinterpretation. I also would just say I also think it's a slight not enough effort in a sense that one watermelon was drawn here and then it was duplicated many, many, many times. One sneaker was drawn here and then it was duplicated many, many, many times. Now, I think this is good to compare this assignment to another person who also did a watermelon. So this student is another student who did a watermelon who is, I think, making a real attempt at sort of getting at what the purpose of the assignment was, to capture the texture of a watermelon and wrap it around a crystal. Now, I think this is a good implementation of that. I do think this feels like a watermelon, except that it doesn't feel wet enough. Okay, there's not enough wetness. So like here's a wet watermelon, and you know it's wet because of these highlights. The highlights are what give it the wetness feel. It's the white highlights. So while I think this is close, I think you're getting there, I think you're close, I think this needs to be wetter and you implement that through highlights. I think that, I'm trying to understand what this crystal is. If it's sand or gravel or gold, like fake gold maybe? I can't tell what it is, so I can't critique it. This I'm assuming is a tree. I think, so what you're seeing here is, again, I think it's a good start, but I don't think it's done. The one issue I have is what the student did here is they took the foliage pen and then they painted with the foliage pen to real quickly do this. That is sort of like a trick that can work if you disguise it. The problem is there was no effort to disguise it here. So what you're seeing is you see this pattern, and you can see that the consistency of the pattern was never changed. It contributes to making it look fake. Whereas the assignment was to try to draw something that the texture looks very realistic, but it's wrapped around a crystal. So I think this is sort of a little bit of a failure in a sense that you're getting too used to using the comforts of the brush and not taking time to interrupt those consistent patterns, which are too consistent for nature. Nature doesn't look like this because nature doesn't follow this exact precise pattern. It's too computerized, too robotic, if that kind of makes sense. Here's another really good one. I love to eat ice cream. I love to knit, and I dread cleaning the drain in the kitchen sink. So we've seen 2 attempts at ice cream. I think that the chocolate syrup is very effectively done here. I think the chocolate syrup feels correct, and I think the maraschino cherry texture feels correct. But I think this ice cream feels a bit too veiny. I think, like, to me, my eye sort of interprets these as veins. Like, I get that it's ice cream because it's labeled as ice cream, and you can tell. You can tell it's ice cream. But I feel like it's a bit too veiny. Here was the other ice cream implementation. I think this ice cream is just a bit more successful in terms of texture. Because I think it captures sort of, I guess maybe you call it like flakiness that you kind of see in ice cream. But I don't think it's bad in any way. I think these are 2 different alternatives, 2 different approaches to capturing texture of ice cream. This is another version of the knits. I gotta zoom in closer on these. Here's a closer zoom in on the texture of these knits. I think that was very good strategy here to come in and shade underneath these cable stitches. I think that was very successful. I want to know what this purl stitch is. I have to talk to you and so you can explain to me these purl stitches, because these are actually important for research project. I think I'm very interested in this expertise that you have. And of course we have to zoom in on the kitchen drain clog. I think this is very, very nice, and I like that the colors chosen here were all sort of like kind of like dull, what would you call them? Dull, ugly colors. And so I think that was a very effective choice for contributing to the ugliness and the disgustingness of a clogged drain. I like the individual highlights on the beans and the rice, although I do think some of these would be smashed. So one thing you could have done to do this a little bit better is if this is really a clog in the drain, there would be some smashed sections. So that could have been something that could have been implemented here to augment this disgustingness. But this is really, really a good attempt to really encapsulate the spirit of this assignment, trying to capture many different textures. I think the bone is very good. The texture of this bone. And it even has some buffalo sauce on it. That's really good. Moldy tomato. The moldy tomato feels a bit too small. And it's like a mini tomato. But I doubt the mini tomato would be the size of in comparison to this rice grain it seems like it'd be a little bit bigger. So again, just a little bit attention to proportionality if that was important. But I think in general it's not so important in this context. This is kind of cartoony. Not cartoony in style implementation choice, but cartoony in a sense that it's kind of like a fun image. So I don't think that the attempt was to be completely proportionally accurate. So I get that. Again, really good choice on the color implementation, that you're not doing a carrot as true orange. You're doing like the orange of a carrot would, a fresh carrot would perhaps be this color actually, and you're choosing to do a very disgusting gray brownish orange, which is, I think, really contributes to the piece. So I think this is very well done. Very good, very good. Here's one where I felt like I think this crystal is the single crystal that encompasses the best capturing of texture. This crystal for sure does feel like it is exactly what a tennis ball would feel like, and what it's sitting on, if this is like Velcro, it feels like Velcro. So when I saw this was probably the crystal that does it the best in terms of like, here's a texture, and you know exactly what that texture is. I think the snake skin feels a bit fox. It feels a bit like fake snake skin, like fake leather, like a fake snake belt. So we need to maybe we need to have an assignment on reptilian textures, because I had a problem with that. I feel like this one has a little bit of a problem with that, and then there was also a problem with the iguana one. So I think it would be a good assignment, texture of reptile textures. The waffle's pretty close, but I think the syrup was a bit of a failure. Like if you look at syrup, I feel like it's darker and has much more glare. You got the glare, but the glare isn't quite smooth, and I don't think the color's quite on. I think the color's a little off. And that can make a big difference in whether I interpret this as real or cartoony. So you guys need to be very careful about your color selections. Alright, here's this one. I talked about this one a little bit in class. Honey, bricks, and the spider. And I felt like the spider was too cute, and also didn't quite capture the texture of the spider. It feels like, it actually feels like the texture of this feels to me a little more like a blanket. Not like a spider. Like, it feels like this is like a comfy blanket I would want to wrap myself around. And it didn't capture quite the ugliness or the disgustingness of a spider. It's too cutesy. So if you wanted to capture the ugliness, this was a bit of a failure. I think the bricks feel like bricks. So I think you captured the texture. But I don't think the piece is very compelling as a whole. So I think compositionally wise, I think this is a bit of a failure. Alright, let's look at this one. I think this is furry dog crystal, ketchup crystal, and I said this was cake crystal, but my daughter said it was macaroon crystal. I think these regions of the cakes, here the chocolate cake, and looks like vanilla birthday cake kind of thing, I think that's extremely effective. Very effective texture capture here. I think the dog crystal is a good attempt, but it doesn't to me feel like something I want to touch. Doesn't feel something to me like that I want to pet. So, and this is really hard to do, but I don't, if it could have been built into this crystal a bit more cutesiness, I think that would draw the viewer to want to like approach and pet. But I don't know how to mechanistically convey how to do that. Just something to think about. I still feel that like the ketchup feels more like a crayon. So I figured it out. I figured out what I think the issue is with the ketchup. Is the reason I think it feels like a crayon is because it's stiff. And there was a part of the ketchup texture that was left out here. Ketchup forms these goops and these piles, and it's soft. And so one reason my brain is not interpreting that ketchup crystal as a ketchup crystal is because I think you would need to incorporate some kind of swirls, some kind of like gooping, some kind of like indentation. That is the texture of ketchup. I get what you did in the sense that you put it was supposed to be kind of like in a glass bottle, but I think that is what's causing me to misinterpret what it is and see it more as a crayon. I think the texture on the cell phone is well done here. I do think the texture on the cell phone screen is well done. I think the chocolate bar is not effectively done, and I think the toe is not effectively done. Although I do think the toe crystal is disgusting. So I do think that was a success. I do think the toe crystal was disgusting. But I think a part of why I think it's disgusting is because the implementation is so awkward and not effective. But I love chocolate, so like I really wanted to see a chocolate that I wanted to eat. Like this is chocolate that I want to eat. This is milk chocolate I want to eat. This is chocolate I throw in the garbage. So I feel like I wanted more here. Okay, here's the crystals from Jane. One of the things I feel like you're struggling with is I don't understand why your images are so pixelated. You're drawing with such a pixelated brush. I think you haven't quite understood how to set up files in Photoshop, and you might be setting these up at very low resolution. I think that's one of the big problems here. Like, you got to increase your ability to draw at fine pixels, fine pixelation, because it's too grainy. And it's detracting from the texture, which I think you were capable of capturing, but it would have been implemented much better if it wasn't so grainy. So I'm proud of you for starting to implement highlights here and here on the avocado. I think the pit of the avocado has some grains in it, which is good, starting to get texture. I'm proud of you for implementing these highlights here on the candy corn. The color on the candy corn is very good. What I also encouraged during the class was, and impersonal with you, is you have very, very sharp color gradations which aren't quite appealing to the eye, especially when you're thinking about food. You need to really focus on blending colors so that we don't see these sharp, drastic conversions of from this color to this color, this color to this color, this color to this color. It should be infinite gradations where you cannot distinguish where one color becomes another. That's what you need to focus on, and you need to get comfortable with that. This is sort of like a more cartoony style, and I know you kind of say that that's kind of like your style, but I think that you say that because you're not really capable right now of blending the colors, and you need to become capable of blending the colors such that you can choose when you want to do this or when you want to blend the colors. But I think this is good progress, and I enjoy the crystals that you've made. Now, I said this in the class. This is another one where I feel actually the same criticism applies here. Here you have sort of, especially in the iceberg lettuce, not so much these ones, but in the iceberg lettuce, you have a very limited color palette here, and very, very sharp regions where this color becomes this color, and this color becomes this color. And it's that contributes to making it feel a little bit more cartoony rather than realistic texture. So what you should focus on is learning how to blend colors into sort of infinite gradations and choose when this treatment is appropriate or choose when the infinite blend is appropriate. So the chocolate chip cookie, I think it feels more like chocolate chip cookie dough. And the issue for me is if you make a chocolate chip cookie, the dough will rise in certain parts, and you'll get these cracks, and you'll get these raised sort of, what would you call them? Raised regions, right? Like raised regions where the dough has expanded. Whereas in yours, the surface of this crystal is very flat. So you got the cracks, okay, but it looks like dried desert sand in a sense that it's too flat. Cookies, the texture of cookies doesn't look like that. The texture of cookies looks like this, where you have hills and valleys and shades and bumps, and yours are just too flat. So I think that's the weakness here in this. It looks more like cookie dough. This one is beautiful. I think this is a extremely effective implementation of exactly what I was hoping for with this assignment. Quail, cheeseburger, maggots. Quail crystal, cheeseburger crystal, maggot crystal. The maggot crystal is effectively very disgusting, and I'm somebody who likes maggots because I study fruit flies. So even for me, the maggot crystal is disgusting. Very well done. The cheeseburger crystal looks really good. It looks tasty. It looks good to eat. The quail crystal, my one criticism is these sharp lines here in the feathers. Like I'm trying to look at quails, I'm trying to think of like where that pattern, that strategy comes from. Like maybe like here, maybe you're trying to like get this, the underbelly, maybe. But I feel like up here it's very photorealistic, and then all of a sudden it converts to sort of like cartoony down here. And you probably did that as you probably were learning as you were going. Like you probably did this first and then effectively learned and got better as you were doing the crystal. But I think that down here it's just a little bit from a different universe than it is from here. But I mean, this is a minor criticism. I think this is one of the best pieces of this assignment. This is fantastic. I love it. Okay, this one's good improvement for Lauren. This is a good improvement for you. I think the texture, I think this is you can get these rainbow striped candy gummy things. I think that's what this is. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, and it looks really good. I got that immediately, that this is a sugary, rubbery gummy candy. Got that right away. Blue jeans, got it right away. The one thing I would say about blue jeans is, right, like, what's the essence of blue jeans? Not just sharp new blue jeans, but also like the wear and the fade and the tear. So you could have had a little bit more room for creativity in here, in a sense that you could have made some of this a little bit faded. You could have had some tears. You could have had some holes in the knees kind of areas. But very good. I knew immediately what it was. I think the texture is captured very well. I think it feels like it's a twill weave that actually is in jeans. It feels like a twill weave for sure. With the Black Widow crystal, I feel like here, again, you're getting good. You're getting good in a sense that you're implementing new things. So you're using effective highlights here. But it feels a little bit too cartoony. Again, that might have been actually what you were trying for, and I know some other people, I think that is what they were trying for. But this assignment, the hope for it was to try to capture texture, and I think even you would agree with that you captured the texture of the candy and the texture of the blue jeans a little bit better than the texture of a Black Widow spider. I'm trying to search Black Widow, and I keep getting this strange search result. Yeah, see, I see here the highlights, for sure. The highlights are in there. That's good. It feels like a black metal. It is a challenging thing to try to capture. Like the carapace of the cuticle of the Black Widow spider feels like it feels like either a high gloss black metal. So I think you've effectively got that in the legs, but it's the belly, the abdomen, and I don't know, the head, I guess. I guess spiders are just belly and a head. It's these parts that sort of throw it off, because this part of the crystal feels very flat. There's no more sheen. The sheen has disappeared here, and that's detracting from the Black Widow Spider crystal. Okay, so here we have coffee, something they like to consume, something they think is disgusting, White Claw, and something they love, a peach, unless they love the White Claw and hate the peach, or perhaps find the coffee disgusting. I think the White Claw crystal is phenomenal. I think it for sure feels like aluminum. I actually like you, whether you like White Claw or not, their branding is really good. Their branding, these woodcuts, is really good. So I'm actually a big fan of this branding. Capturing the aluminum here is really good. Coffee, again, same thing, really good. I completely can tell that this is sort of high gloss, smooth ceramic with hot boiling coffee. Amazing. I'm trying to feel what this is. I don't know if this is like you like to supplement your coffee with like chocolate. I don't know what this is. But it doesn't bother me. Like it, I like it. It feels like it makes the picture more complete. I think compositionally wise, I think this piece is excellent. I think the background color is a fantastic choice. Really brings out the color palette here is just phenomenal choices. The shadows are good. It's good compositional wise. Fantastic. This makes me want coffee right now. Coffee, 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 coffee. Okay, here we have octopus, mold, queso, cheese. I assume melted cheese. In this case, I feel the mold feels more like Jello. And the reason it feels like Jello is because you put the highlights on the mold crystal. So it feels like those, you go to a Chinese buffet and it feels like those, they have those Jellos with fruits inside of them. That's what this feels like to me. So I think the mold crystal needs to be flat. Mold, I've never seen, well, I mean, there are shiny fungal molds, but those are like in the wild in the forest. Like I've never seen in like a house, mold in like a house look shiny. So I would say that's one flaw in the texture of the mold crystal. Octopus would for sure be shiny, so it makes sense. Queso would for sure be shiny, so that makes sense. I think the lighting, this thing keeps popping up. The lighting down here is, I think, a bit confused. So it seems like this part of the octopus tail is dark, but then this part of the octopus tail is light. So I'm trying to figure out, like, what is the lighting situation that makes that happen, and my brain can't quite understand it. So I think moving forward, just think a little bit about where's your light source, how can I consistently implement that light source. It might be that the leg is like digging into this. I don't know if this is like a recliner chair. It feels like an old grandma recliner chair. And in that sense, this texture on this chair feels very nice. But I don't know if that's actually what it is. I don't know. But be careful about the lighting because you can create awkward situations where the viewer might not be able to quite understand visually what's happening in those situations. I also feel like the queso doesn't look so appetizing. It feels kind of snotty. Oh, but I'm looking now. It definitely looks snotty. I would say you just need a little bit more of these lumps. So I take back what I said. Queso is snotty, and it looks lumpy. So you just need, I think, a little bit more of the lumps. I think the lumps were a good idea, and you should have pushed it a little bit further. I love this one. I love gummy worms. Love gummy worms. But if I'm going to be a criticizer of gummy worm drawings, and just so you know, I am a connoisseur of gummy worm drawings, and I have made drawings of gummy worms. So I know that there are two types of gummy worms. There are sour gummy worms, and there are standard gummy worms. And you might notice, if you look carefully, that the color palette of the sour gummy worms is very different than the color palette of the normal gummy worms. And these gummy worms are implemented with the sour gummy worm palette, but if they were the sour gummy worms, they would have sugar on the sour top. Like this. But they don't have that, which makes me think that the student was drawing these gummy worms, the shiny gummy worms. But if they were drawing the shiny gummy worms, the color palette is wrong. So either the criticism is the color palette is wrong here, or there's no sugar. But I love gummy worms, so I love this. And this was done really, really well. Really well. So I think they were drawing shiny gummy worms, and if that was the case, you chose the wrong color palette, in my opinion. And I really wanted to see that correct color palette, because that's one of the things that makes gummy worms so appealing, so appetizing, is that fluorescent, shiny, sheeny, see-through color palette. Whereas this looks like the sour gummy worm palette. So I think that could have been done better. But I love gummy worms, and I love the crystal. I think the pasta sauce and the mold, this is very effective. Although I would apply the same criticism here in a sense that this crystal also has fallen into the ketchup crystal mistake, in that it feels very hard. It feels too hard. It feels more like a crayon. It feels like a moldy crayon. The mold is perfect. I don't have any criticism against the mold. What I have is the ketchup should be lumpy, just like I said in the past critique. Ketchup is lumpy and forms these goops. That's its essence. And there's no goops, so this feels like a moldy crayon. So that's my same criticism applied here. The Morpho Butterfly Crystal, I think it's a good start, but again, I think the issue here, I think the student is struggling with making the right choices in color. What are Morpho Butterflies famous for? What's their essence? Their essence is very, very bright, iridescent, fluorescent color palette. Very, very bright, fluorescent, iridescent blue. This feels much too flat. It feels much too light blue. There's not enough iridescence. There's not enough shine. So I think this student has really struggled with capturing proper color. And color choices are very important. So maybe go back, watch that video on color by Tom Sachs, and really take to heart that the choice of color is extremely important, and that is what things what makes things look appetizing, what makes things look beautiful to our brain. That's a very, very important choice, and so I would encourage a student to reflect a little bit on color choice. Now I think this student approached the challenge again with sort of like the cartoony mindset. In terms of like nature, this is definitely like a cartoon of nature. Corn, definitely like a cartoon of corn. A cartoon of blood. But I don't think it's close to the right texture of what these things are. What I'm sort of, my criticisms of the corn texture is the corn kernels should be very tight. They should be very tight. The distance between the corn kernels is effectively reduces to 0. Whereas here, there's a definite gap. It's almost more like a waffle pattern. There's a definite gap between crystals, or gap between corn kernels. So I think that is detracting from my ability to understand this is corn. It feels more like gold. It feels more like a hard gold mold. I also think in terms of like blood, like I think the color choice is wrong. Blood is extremely dark. If you look at blood, it's almost black. And then just on the edges, it's red. It feels like watercolor. So, for example, like these are some good examples of blood color. Very, very dark, almost black. This sort of looks looks more like ice cream cherry syrup, something like that. Or hot lava, maybe. Like when I saw this, I thought it was like a mountain with exuding hot lava. So I think the blood. And the other thing about blood is, like, the essence of blood is that blood splatters. So, like, what would have been really good here is to really use that strategy of making a real cool splatter brush and then put some blood splatters. Whereas just a couple dots to kind of, like, indicate, like, there was a little bit of splatter. Like, I don't think that's quite the way to go to capture the texture of blood. The pink camouflage crystal. This one is definitely disgusting. I hope this is not the one that they like. This one's definitely disgusting. I like the stitches. The stitches get the texture good. What I would suggest is if you remember back to the blue jeans one and the knits, people kind of drew some individual what would you call them? Because they're not stitches, but they're what effectively I think you'd call them like weave lines. So like What I would suggest you might want to add are some weave lines in the future if you're going to capture textiles. But I think this is a very effective capture of something that's quite disgusting. For me, the grass feels a little bit too transparent. So if you look at grass, like if you look at really, really beautiful turf grass is very thick. Like that's what makes us think it's beautiful. It's like thickness and density of the leaves. Whereas this one, the leaves feel very transparent, feel see-through, and I feel like the color's a little bit off. So I think this one was a little bit of a failed in a sense that not quite the correct color palette and not quite capturing the thickness that you sort of want with fresh cut grass. And the way that you could do that a little bit better is this is a good start, but just keep building it up. I would build up the streaks on top of each other, one after the other, of different shades of green, and try to get them closer and closer to that more accurate color palette. I like the heat, so I can tell that this is hot, so I like that. And I like the crack of the crystal. I think that was creative. I like that. I think those are good decisions. But to me, the coffee feels a little bit metallic. It almost feels like copper spray paint. So again, here I would criticize in a sense of trying to pick more effective color choices. If you really want something to feel like it's real, you got to hit on that right color. And I think this color pattern, this color tone is a little bit too metallic, which I like. I like copper, but it feels more like copper. Okay, so that was all the crystals. I hope I gave people some good suggestions for how they can improve. I hope the criticisms weren't too harsh. I'm really just trying to give you pointers on how to make better stuff in the future, how to better capture texture in the future. So hopefully take it to heart. Hopefully it will be useful for you in the future. Good luck with your next projects.